Welcome to episode 107 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Riccardo Gregori about his tool, PACX, which is very similar to the PACX, but he's added some functions that are very helpful and can make your life much easier when having to script lots of changes. It helps us all to be quote-unquote lazy Italian developers. We can get into that in the show. He also has multiple tools, 5 of them, for the XRM Toolbox, under the pseudonym Neonette, which means dark night in Italian. So great guy, great meeting him, and you'll enjoy this episode as well. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott, I'm on West Coast time. Daryl, Scott, how's it going?
I'm good, Daryl. Thank you. Yeah, it's very laid back here. Yeah, yes. I'm on West Coast now.
Okay.
I wasn't West Coast last week, so I'm just still recovering from being on East Coast time, where everything's a little bit more on time and,
a little bit more on time. That's the only difference. East Coast time, you're on time. West Coast time, you're just not. You
just got
an excuse to be
go
lazy.
with the flow, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I was at Dev Intersections last week, actually.
Yes.
Which was like a pure pro dev conference, which was also
cool.
Normally we go to just like these Power Platform conferences where everyone's like super excited about the Power Platform and new features and all this kind of stuff. Whereas primarily the audience was just pro devs. So it was very much about introducing people to the Power Platform and saying, hey, look, there's this whole new world here that you can look at, actually the whole new world. That's like a Disney song. I mean, it was at Disney. So, that's a,
okay.
All right. I could have sung that for them, actually.
You could have sung it for them.
Yeah,
that probably wouldn't have gone over that well, but
but
maybe something for Mary Poppins with the British accent. So
yeah. Would you? What are you saying? I'm like Mary. I mean, I think Dick Van Dyke, perhaps, maybe. That's
something
your
from Mary Poppins, the movie. Not
when you do your
Mary
British
Poppins.
accent.
No, we don't want to hear my British accent more than we want to hear my Italian accent. Which
we did have a party at Universal Studios. Which was cool. We're like the Power Platform conference a couple of years ago. So we did the Harry Potter experience and, did all those rides. It's, pretty cool. Have you been to Harry Potter World, whatever it's called?
I've not.
No.
I've not gone and explored the magical world of Harry Potter. I did see Christine was someplace where they had like the whole Privet Drive set up and stuff. And she said that she moved into a house and people thought that she was actually living there. And she's like, no, this is Harry Potter's house. Like, come on, get with it, people.
Under the stairs,
under the stairs.
But yeah, there was lots of, waving of wands and casting spells and, doing magical commands. I was trying to come up with various different GitHub commands. But you can see where I'm going with this, right?
Yes. I was like, where is he going with this? But I see it. You got there. Yes. Magical commands.
I think it was one of them was expect git pull us. I think that was one of my, but everyone got a bit sick of my stupid Harry Potter references. But talking of commands and command lines, we can introduce our guest, our very special guest.
Our guest in his tool. So our guest hails from Italy, Riccardo Gregori, the best Italian accent I'm going to give it. So I'm sorry for all those that are offended by it. But that's best I got, best I can deal with. And Ricardo is the creator of a command line tool that's rather new that I thought was kind of interesting. I thought we'd introduce our guest. So welcome, Ricardo. How are you doing?
Doing good, thank you. Thank you,
yes.
Daryl. Thank you, Scott.
Welcome, Ricardo.
I'm really excited to be here.
I didn't get an introduction. He's actually the CRM Market Unit Delivery Lead, Agile Delivery Lead, Directo Presso, Adenad, and Pro Code Avenger. This is your details on LinkedIn if you're wondering.
Avengers, Universal Studios. I mean, that goes quite well. I mean, that's like double segue, right? Really? I mean, I missed that one.
You didn't even know it was there. But yes, we have a Pro Code Avenger. I missed. So
yes,
we need the theme tune playing in the background.
Everyone thinks that Pro Code is dead, low code it's alive. So we need to avenge them.
That's the avenging that has to take place. I love it. I love it.
So I mean, you kind of look a bit like Tony Stark. So you could be, with the whole kind of beard going on there. So the Iron Man of Pro Code.
I hope so.
You're aspiring. That's where you're going in at.
My inspiration.
Well, I mean, looking at your GitHub repository, I have to say, it's definitely you're getting there. So I think, yeah, kudos. You've got some fantastic stuff there, and of course, one of your tools, the command line, PACX, you call, which I love. I think that's a fantastic name for it, actually, because it does what it says on the tin. It extends the pack CLI. It creates like things that you can't do in the pack CLI, because I'm sure everyone all of our listeners are very familiar with the pack CLI, which obviously is the Power Platform CLI, command line interpreter, and of course, everyone wants to do things on the command line these days. None of these.
It's funny because we're completely opposite. I take the command line stuff and I put a WinForm on top of it with the early bound stuff, and you take the command line stuff and you put another command line on top of it, or association with it. So it's kind of funny how those two things are touching each other. So
if you can't do it through a command line, then I'm very suspicious of it. I was like, really, do I want to use it if I can't automate that?
Yes, totally. So let's start off with what is PACX? What is this tool?
Yes, basically, the idea behind it is what you said, Scotty. I was playing around with the PAC tool in the last couple of days. I work in CRM context since 2009, when it was CRM 3, basically, and the Power Platform was called XRM. I always found a big value in the CRM context as a development platform. More than on the CRM process by themselves. And so I worked hard in my career in order to value that system as a development platform. And in my career, I've created a lot of tools. I worked on methodologies, approaches, and so on to streamline the development process within the XRM platform that now has become the Power Platform. In the last couple of years, I worked in a very big digital transformation program. And this program was driven in Agile, and there were up to 12, 15 Agile teams working together on the same environment, on the same solution, different aspects of the same solution, but with overlapping scopes. And in order to manage that complexity, you need to have a standardized approach, standardized methodologies. You need to use tools. I'm a big fan of tools, of the XRM Toolbox, for instance. And so I started developing tools for the XRM Toolbox from the beginning. The PACX. What's the purpose of the PACX? In the last couple of years, I worked a lot with the Power Platform CLI. And it's useful because what I like to do is to script everything I can in order to, for instance, version what I'm doing in the CRM, in the Power Platform environment. And so, working with Visual Studio Code's the Power Platform CLI, often I've been found in the situation in which I wanted a specific command that wasn't present there. And I thought, it would be really helpful if I have something to launch here, to version, that simplifies me these operations. For instance, the first operations that came in mind to me were the data model manipulations operations. I mean, creating tables, creating columns.
I saw that in the list of commands. Yeah, create relationships between tables as well. That's another one of your...
Yeah. Everything about data model manipulation, data model setup. I think it's important. It's really useful to be able to script the creation of the data model, to version the creation of the data model. Often I've been found in situations in which I have to create two different tables or two or more different tables having a similar schema, same set of columns, with some difference, so some small difference, and you need to do everything by hand. Scripting allows to simplify this, of course.
Yeah.
And so what I was thinking was about having something that simplifies me in this part of my work daily, basically.
Yeah.
And
is there a is there a sort of like a recent project where you've worked on where you've found that has really sort of reduced the time that it's taken to kind of go through the user interface? Maybe have you done sort of like some data-driven generation of scripts to create tables, or what was the scenario there?
Yes, basically I worked on different demos from different customers, demos or POCs that had to become the core of actual projects, and to set up all that tables, columns, relationship, whatever. I wanted to have something that allowed me to do it easily. And so I started this project. And the aim was not simply having something to manipulate the data model, but creating a platform that allows me to create the commands I need to use daily. If tomorrow I'm working in another context and I found the necessity to have a specific command to do something specific, I would like to do it easily with very few steps.
That was what struck me actually when I started to look at Daryl sent me the link, and I was like, oh, what's happening? Looking at, and that's what struck me, is that looking through the code, I can see that was your line of thinking. It's like, okay, how do I create this infrastructure that allows me to add in further verbs that you can then keep on adding to over time? And what really intrigued me is that when you use, obviously I quickly installed it and started to use it, and what really intrigued me is that because I'd used the Power Platform CLI, the PACX CLI, so much, it's very natural to me, because you've mimicked all the same commands. So like the pack auth, I used the device code, and I didn't even do help. I just tried it straight off, and there's the device code, and then I could create my own my own auth profile and everything. And so that's really cool. The first question that came to me is that, did you use the source code from the pack, or did you reverse engineer it and just kind of mimic it? Or how did that happen?
I started it from scratch.
That's impressive.
Everything from scratch.
So you basically reverse engineered how, because obviously they're using the .NET Core libraries to do all of the XRM service client and behind the scenes. So I'm guessing you're using the same kind of auth profile generation to store the.
Yes, similar, really similar. I started from scratch. I actually didn't look at the code of the PACX CLI. I created a lot of command line utilities in my career, so it's quite easy for me to set up something to start with. And then I try to mimic the behavior.
Yeah. Well, you did a very good job, because I didn't need to do the help.
And one feature that I like, the feature that I like most, is that it's self-documenting. I'm an Italian, so I'm basically lazy. And the documentation part is something that it's for a
I must be Italian too, because I hate to document too.
And so all the documentation you see in the wiki, in the GitHub page, is automatically generated at compile time, starting from the attributes that decorate each command. And this, for me, it's a time saver. Every time I do something on the repository, the documentation is automatically updated.
Well, the docs are great. I mean, that was what struck me as well. It was like looking through. I love the fact that you've got the hierarchy there, you've got the links, and they hyperlink through to all the different commands. But I think, you say that you're lazy, and let's all be Italian, right? I think that's every developer should be Italian. I think this is It's a trait. And because it means automating things, and it makes things that are going to be less prone to error and everything. But of course, what it does mean is that you need to make sure that the attributes that you've put on your classes and methods and everything, you've got to put the actual description in there. And I think you've done a very good job of describing them. So whilst you automatically generate it, you've also, I think, done a very good job of, explaining what these different commands do.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about that is it's amazing how good it feels when you automate something like that. You're like, it takes 10 minutes to change this. Yeah. But I'm going to forget it sometime. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to update it, and I won't update the dot, and then when it's automated, you're like, I'll just make the code change and everything will just automatically work. Like, it's like you're back to our Harry Potter moment. I'm a wizard, so I can just do whatever I want and it just works, right? So
just take a look at the list of Git commits and you will find a lot of commits of that kind.
Yes.
I forgot to document that attribute, or the documentation is copy pasted from another comment. I like to write it correctly.
Just today, I released a version of the early bound generator, and I have a unit test in there to make sure that I'm creating the correct JSON file for the model builder to use. And it's really finicky, and it's almost to the point where I don't like the test, but I broke it again today. So I deployed and I'm like, oh dang it, the test broke and the build broke, so I need to fix the test. So yes, that happens to the best of us, I think, when we have those issues. Oh, I forgot to do this. Oh, I did this wrong. And so you had those same commits over and over again, fixing this build again or whatever. Yeah, that's always kind of fun. One of the key aspects of the XRM Toolcast is that we have our guests that comes on and it's giving of their time and their energy and their ability to talk and share with us. And then we give them homework. We give them things that we want them to go home and do. So I'm assuming that your PACX delete column command is just going through and deleting it. As long as there are no dependencies, it'll go through and delete it.
Of course.
So what you could do is you could go grab my code from the attribute manager that goes through and like automatically deletes all the dependencies. And you could add that as like a force option to go through and remove all the other dependencies as a part of it. So yeah, there you go. You could integrate that. And I don't know if it's a copy pasta for mine or if there's some good way to be able to share that from one to the other, but I guess it's a NuGet package. I guess you could share. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so there's your homework. Now you've got to go through and extend that to have a force option to actually go through and
nice idea.
All the dependencies. You're welcome. You're welcome.
But you do have a command to show dependencies
just
in PACX. So you kind of got part of it already there. So you just need to sort of combine the two and join the dots.
Yeah.
The complexities is the dependencies of columns within forms, for instance, because you cannot delete the form. You need to grab the form XML, remove the column, but there can be a dependency on JavaScript. So I think that part will be trickier, but sure.
Yeah. It would be great if the platform did it for us as well. That would be awesome. If we could just,
native,
get rid of this column. Yes. I don't want it anymore. I don't care what it's used. Just get rid of it. Like how many hours have we wasted, right? Yes. We combine every developer in a given month.
Oh. And it's even worse because now it's easier for people to go through and create columns too, right? Like there's those whatever that new feature is to go through and be able to create columns. Like you can do it really fast, and then all of a sudden, I created this not the way I want it, and oh dang it, now I got to delete it, but it's been added to 2 different views already, and I got to it's annoying.
Exactly, it'll add it all to those views, and exactly. It's just and then the other thing is, of course, if you're going to create stuff with Copilot, it makes it even easier to create columns, and then you go, I didn't really want that column because Copilot's sort of named it something, and I don't get rid of it.
May I say something unpopular?
Of course.
Absolutely.
I hate the way Copilot manages that part. Because you don't know how columns will be created, which name will be used, which flag will be set. One of the key features of the PACX commands is that PACX is an Italian. And is that you can just pass the minimum information required to create a column or a table, and everything else is inferred automatically. Of course, you can pass everything if you want, but if you don't want, you can pass the minimum necessary information, mandatory information, and everything is set up using what I think are the best practice from my experience. So, for instance, the name of the column is created all lowercase, taking the prefix from the solution in which the column will be set. If you create an option set attribute, the name will be set with the code suffix to mimic the behavior of standard dynamic fields and so on. So flags also are set by default the way that I think it's correct. They will be set. They need to be set, and so on. So basically, if I need to create a table, I can just say create table named Riccardo Gregori, and it does everything for me the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
One of the features I would like to add is the possibility to change the default behavior, change the default conventions, and it will be added, I think, later. It's one of the features I have in mind, but for now, the conventions that are still there for me are the best, basically. The one that I apply in my standard projects.
So when you create tables and apps using Copilot, there is a degree of like you don't know what's going on under the covers. It just goes and does the stuff, and I mean, in a sense, that's the point, right? Because the people who are using Copilot don't need to know what's going on. It's just about creating the app quickly. But what would be cool is if you could create like a prompt, like maybe sort of using RAG pattern or whatever, using a GPT Copilot, and then it would then generate using natural language the script for your tables and your columns and your relationships. Because one of the great things about it, you can create a GPT and you can actually tell it to create SQL script to create you a database schema, like, oh, I want an application to manage my orders and line items and products and stuff. And it'll create you a T-SQL script to create all your different tables, your columns and the relationships and primary keys and foreign keys and all that kind of stuff. So that would be awesome if you could create like a RAG prompt that would be able to actually go and create the script for PACX or whatever it was called in Italian. I can't remember what it was.
A nice idea. I can include the semantic kernel.
Yeah, use semantic kernel. Exactly. Totally. Great example. Yeah. So by tomorrow, that'd be great.
Okay, I love all the homework that we're giving. We can just keep on piling it on.
Yes, that's the purpose of the approach of creating an infrastructure that allows me to do something, to add additional feature easily. It's the possibility to get angry while you eat. So I think it would be helpful to have something else like this, and in a couple of hours I'm set up and everything will work.
There we go. We'll hold that to you. I mean, how hard can it be? A couple of hours. There we go. So just to pick up on one of the things that your the homepage on your GitHub says, is it says one of the things that it does is provides commands for things that you can't do through the user interface, and that really intrigued me because I think that's often a real area of interest where there's some functionality that you can't get to through the UI, but maybe is used by first-party apps or anything like that. Is there a particular piece of functionality they're referring to there, or is that like a future idea? Or
I pushed it 2 days ago, for instance, a command to create a polymorphic relationship between tables. That's something that you can do via UI. You can do it via code. You can do it using the SDK, but it's quite complex because you need to create a complex JSON structure. The SDK doesn't have actually the current objects to work with the custom API that is needed to create a polymorphic relationship. And so I just created a command in which you just need to say what's the table that will contain the lookup column, what's the name of the lookup column, and what are the tables you want to relate to that table, to that lookup field. And everything is basically done by the command. Then, of course, if you want, just like on the other commands, you can specify all the other information requested. For instance, how the end side of the relationship should be shown in the child tables, if you want to hide them, if you want to show the plural names and so on, if you want to make the lookup mandatory or optional, or if you want to customize the schema name and so on. But basically, with 3 arguments, you are able to create a polymorphic lookup. That is something that right now you cannot do via UI. And even if you could do this via UI, I don't think that will be 3 clicks to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting, the whole story between user interface versus, like you were saying earlier, Daryl, about, user interface versus command line, because it's certainly not an either or. And that's, and we'll talk about this in a minute, because Ricardo, you've got a whole slew, I think was the phrase you used, Daryl, the slew of XRM Toolbox plugins, and of course they're all very much user interface. So it's not like an either or. I think the great thing about a command line interface is it allows you to do something that if you do regularly, and therefore you're going to get some muscle memory there. You can really get it going. There's a much more efficient workflow that you can do, rather than going through the click through and maybe having to understand all the different checkboxes and not really sure what's happening behind the scenes. So, because of course there is a plugin for the XRM Toolbox that allows you to create polymorphic relationships. So it's it's like an either or thing. I think you could just choose, and depending on how often you do it, maybe one's going to be used more often than others. But I love the fact that it's cross-platform as well, because it's using .NET Tool. That's cool. I guess that's one of the things that maybe is an advantage over the XRM Toolbox. If you're using a Mac, you don't need to spin up a Windows machine on your Mac, or if you're using Linux, it's going to be easier. Have you tested it on Linux?
Not, I've tested it on a Mac.
Right, on a Mac, yeah. Which, and I can't think of any reasons, as long as you got permissions and as long as you haven't got a lockdown version of things. But I think that's becoming more and more important, especially with last week with the looking around the audience of everyone with these pro devs, it was quite marked. There was almost like a half and half, people using Macs versus using Windows machines. And so, I think that becomes quite a powerful story.
The idea behind it was that I would like to launch the tool via command line and also via pipeline, Git or DevOps pipeline. I would like to be able to run that from there. And often GitHub pipelines are run from Ubuntu machines or Linux machines. And so it would be helpful to have something that you can launch from Linux.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that it's easy to add in more commands. So before we move on to your XRM Toolbox commands, do you have like a backlog of commands that you're thinking about adding in? I mean, if you got like, I need to go and do this before Christmas, or
Yes. Actually, in the GitHub repo is connected to the private GitHub projects, in which I have a Kanban of stuff that I would like. And I will be adding what you said, Daryl, before, the possibility to drop everything.
Top priority, right?
Yes. The top priority, yes, totally. Hey, I was looking at your issues on the public site and actually created one, and I was like, "There's only one out here. Like, who is this person? Only has one issue on their project. Like, I've got like 40 that I still have to go through, and I closed 20 this last 3 weeks. So it's like, I still have another. Like, I got a third. That's great.
It's Tony Stark. Come on,
Tony Stark.
He's got AI assistants kind of doing everything for him, doesn't he? Issues.
What's the name of his computer he talks to?
Jarvis,
all the time?
is it?
Jarvis, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jarvis.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever searched for Jarvis in GitHub repos. There are a lot of repos called Jarvis something.
I bet. I think every developer wants to have this idea of being able to control things in a futuristic way. So yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Just like you pull stuff in onto the screen and then spin it around and then expand it out, and then it's like, what are you even doing? You're just playing with stuff. You do some real work.
You could just click a button. Come on, don't do that stuff. Yes, that's. I always think it's funny. You mentioned, like, when you go through, you have the defaults set the way that you think are the best ways of doing it, which are also the ways that you do it, I would assume, because I don't think you would think it's the best way and then not do it. So that's the beauty of creating a tool, is that you can like hope that other people will use your tool, and then you walk in on their project and they've already done it the way that you want it to be done, and it's set up the way you want it to be done. And like your life is like, oh yes, I made it easier on myself, not knowing that would be the actual case. But it's an interesting line that I think we have to walk with. What do we like? What do we want? Versus what is the average person going to want, or the average person is going to like. And that's something that I always have to kind of go through with some of my tools as well, the defaults for the especially the early bound generator, because there's so many options. Like, well, what should the average person be doing? And so it's an interesting idea there, interesting thing you have to weigh. So let's go to the XRM Toolbox. So you've got 5 tools out here. Let's do a quick little maybe minute introduction for each one. So let's start with Constant Extractor. What's that tool? What would people use it for?
Oh, Constant Extractor. I think that we can discuss about this tool with you, Daryl, for an hour or more, because I think that it allows you to use an approach that completely opposite of your one.
Yes,
I mean,
actually, just get my popcorn. Hang on a minute.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of early bound or late bound entities, of both. Okay. I'm actually a fan of an hybrid approach that I like to call special purpose early bound entities.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like early bound because you are stuck with a huge blob object.
Okay.
Often, not all the object properties are filled, and you move these objects around in your code base, and you don't know which properties are actually used in where. And so it gives me headaches always. And so the approach that I actually prefer is an approach in which I create special purpose early bound entities using a base class that I've created, that I have in my library. And those special class early bound entities are self-contained and are consistent in terms of state. That tool, what does it allows you to do? Basically, it generates for you constant file, more than one constant file, to describe in terms of constants, .NET constants or JavaScript constants, the structure of your data model. Just like the early bound generator does in terms of creating classes. But this allows you to use the late bound approach, so the entity, without the need to having magic strings typed in it. So I use basically constants, and this allows me to create. I use that after to create my special purpose entities and to create the fetch XML queries or the query expressions without using magic strings. I just type entity dot name of the properties
to get the actual string value of it. What is there any difference between, or is there an advantage using that versus Jonas's late bound constants generator? I'm assuming they're pretty much identical.
No, they are pretty much identical. Yeah. I generate constants for both C# and JavaScript.
Oh, and JavaScript. Okay. Yeah.
That can be used also in the script files. That's I think the only difference. Cool. Maybe the way that constant files are generated. Nothing. I actually need to thank my guys from Avana that at me they created the first version of the tool that was a console application, basically. And I just moved the business logic from the console application into the XRM Toolbox plugin in order to share that with a bigger audience. In terms of deployment, it's quite easier to deploy via XRM Toolbox instead of having custom apps deployed everywhere.
So we have the whole journey. You've created command line tools, and now you've created plugin tools for the XRM Toolbox from the command. Yeah, you've done everything. Yeah, you've done everything. Okay, next up, we're gonna have to go faster because that one was a little bit long. The environment comparer. Give it a quick minute description of what that is.
WinMerge for Dataverse.
WinMerge for Dataverse, where you can go through and compare your actual solutions that you've extracted, or do is it download and extracted, or what?
Data.
The data.
I work basically in complex solutions with thousands of configuration entities in which records of the entities are configuration data. And when you need to deploy something from an environment to another, basically often you need to compare what's in one environment or what's in the other to check if there's something changed, something missing, and basically merge everything, move something from one environment to the other, delete records that are not in the first environment from the second environment. It does something more than simply data movement that you can do with the package deployer, for instance. With the package deployer, you take all the data and move it from an environment to another. With that tool, you can compare, basically, using a comparison key and take a look at what's changed and take decisions. Basically,
I'm sure that's very, very helpful where you're dealing with tables that are used to drive some logic, and this one's missing it in this environment, or this one has a different value here, and that would be helpful, very helpful for debugging in that one. So that's the environment comparer, and then that would be leading on to the environment solution comparer, which is what I think I just mentioned before, where you're actually doing downloading the solutions and then comparing the actual XML of it. Is that what we're doing then?
No. The first. In the project I mentioned before, that tool was born in that project. We had, as I said, 15 different development teams, each one with his own development environment, and everything had to be merged in a single test environment. And I had the problem that Microsoft deployments of solutions were not aligned in the different environments. And so I was found with version 1 of a given solution in an environment, version 1.4 of the same solution in another one. So the tools allows you to select many environments, 10, 15 environments, how much you want, and it compares you the list of solutions from
the
each
versions of those solutions,
and compares the versions. Then you can pick a solution and check what's within that solution, and compare also the content of a given solution. But first of all, compares the whole solution structure in order to be sure that two environments are aligned in terms of version, in terms of which solutions are deployed, managed and unmanaged versions, and so on.
I love the way you described why you needed to create that tool. It's basically a nice way of saying that Microsoft broke me by deploying different solutions in different environments, and I had to figure out why. Okay. All right. So that's very helpful too. The next one, the modern theme builder.
Yes, that is another stuff that you cannot do by default using the UI of Dynamics. Microsoft deployed the Fluent UI 2. That broke the whole theming approach, and to create a new theme that works with the new Fluent UI, you basically have to create a custom web resource, change an environment variable, and so on. I basically created a tool that allows you with what you see is what you get UI to generate your theme, save the web resource into the environment, and publish it. I mean, set the environment variable in order to show actually what your changes into the environment. You can also create more than one theme for a given environment and pick the one you want. Useful when you have a development chain and you want to differentiate between the developer environment, test environment, production environment, just like XRM Toolbox does, basically.
Yep.
Different roles.
Totally. Then we have two more, actually. There's the Solution Manager.
Oh,
Nice, that one.
that was quite easy. When you import a solution via UI with the new UI, it doesn't show any progress indicator. You don't know what's happening behind the curtain. So what I needed, it was a progress indicator and a way to easily download the report, the status report, the solution import.
How good is the progress? Is it standard like 0 to 20 and then 21, 24, 80, 100 done? Like, is it that, or how good? Because you're completely dependent on the platform, I'm assuming, for the progress.
Like the little green dots, they used to be. They're like little green dots. They'd keep on going up and up and up, and then they'd stop, and then you go, oh, what's going on? Is it? And then it would go forward, and you, oh, is it? And then it would start going backwards. Do you remember that, where it would start to doing work backwards, and you're like, oh, I've got to wait for another 10 minutes.
Or in Office Space, where they'd have a brand new one that would start over after that one was done. And I'm like, no, I thought I was done. Anyway.
If you play around with the tool, you will see that in the bottom part of the XRM Toolbox, it creates a chart showing you the expected elapsed time calculated by the tool using the percentage provided by Dataverse itself, and correlates it with the actual duration of the operation. And so you see the chart that does something like that.
Yeah. Because in the room workbench, I had to do something very similar, because it was like, it's kind of like a logarithmic scale. Like, you get this, like Daryl, you said, you get past the first 80% really, really quickly. And then the last 20% goes really slowly. And so I had to kind of do the same thing, just to kind of set people's expectations. Like, let's just slow down that first 80%.
That was useful for me, because looking at that chart, I could say to my colleagues, oh no, it's on the top of the curve. It will take not the time that it's estimated. It will take some minutes more or some minutes less, depending on what part of the curve I was in.
Yeah. I wonder, it would be interesting, isn't it, to do some statistical analysis on where the time goes. Because, what you'd have to do is you'd have to have like the ALM accelerator team call it the kitchen sink solution, where they've got like a solution that's literally got every single component in there, you can possibly import, like just everything. And so you'd have to kind of create like an error that happens at each of those points, so that you could then actually mark it as saying, okay, well, it took this amount of time to get, because it does it in order, right? When you download the XML, the Excel spreadsheet, you can see that it's doing it in a certain order. So yeah, no, but I'm not going to set you that as homework, because I wouldn't push down anyway.
Then the final one we have has a ASCII symbol in it for not ASCII, a Unicode symbol for the Airplane Web API Launcher.
Web API launcher.
Oh, actually, you know what? I copied the wrong line. Never mind.
No,
That was the next one before that. All right, look at that. Copy and paste there. He's like, what did I do? Oh, all right, never mind. That's a
solution manager, environment solution compare, custom text.
We got them all. We got them all. I highlighted from the website and I copied it, and then when I was like, oh yeah, there's another one I missed, and then I was like, oh no, that's not the one that I missed. So it's great to
I have another tool on the works, and I'm actually I stopped it because I don't know if creating it as a XRM Toolbox tool or as a PACX command to generate wiki style documentation about Dataverse tables.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Something that you need to do in basically every CRM project is to document what you have created in terms of structure of the data model, and we do that often using the DevOps Wiki. For instance, we create the documentation within the wiki of DevOps, of Azure DevOps. And so generating, just like I actually do with the commands of PACX, auto-generating documentation in wiki format, starting from the structure of a Dataverse table in order to deploy that documentation within a DevOps wiki. I think that it's quite useful. I started doing that as an XRM Toolbox tool. Maybe I will move it into PACX. I don't know. I need to think about it.
You should team up with Jonas on that, because he's got a tool that creates a UML diagram for Dataverse tables using Plan UML. It's like open source UML visualizer, which is, it's like a VS Code plugin and stuff like that. And that would be awesome, because then you could document it in the wiki, but then you could also insert a visual.
DevOps wiki uses Mermaid.
Oh, the Mermaid.
It's something just like Plant UML, and the syntax is quite similar. So I think that would be actually basically easy to move from one.
And then for the business process flows and stuff like that, you could use Mermaid as well, because Mermaid does BPF type stuff as well, doesn't it? For flows, business flows. What else?
Not all the Mermaid diagrams are supported by Visual Studio right now. Right. Just some subset, but we can try.
Yeah. Nice. Sounds good.
So I'm seeing all these tools that have come out of this like mega project, which is like I think I'm in that exact same mega project now. Maybe it's a little bit smaller, but there's like 6 different teams. We have to somehow merge all of our different solutions into all these different environments. We have like 20 different environments we have to worry about. I'm like, all right, some of these tools actually might be kind of helpful for us to go through and utilize. So I'm glad we definitely went through and got some of those. Even the constants extractor. We're in we're not in TypeScript, we're in JavaScript. And there's so much code that there's no way that they're going to give the okay of, convert everything to TypeScript. That's not going to happen. So even that I may actually think about using just to get a quick way to get the JavaScript that we could use to reference it. So it's interesting. So I'm so glad that we've had you on to hear about all these things that I didn't know about, as well as to just dive into the tool that we were starting with and the PACX tool. But is there anything that we're missing? Anything else that's coming down the pipe that you want to talk about? Anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up?
Just a couple of things. First of all, I would like to thank 2 of my colleagues that helped me with the PACX a lot, that are Simone Giubarelli and Francesco Catino. And second of all, the PACX, in my idea, we would like to be a community tool. So feel free to submit to clone the repository, submit pull requests, add your own commands to the tool if you want. If you think that there can be something useful, feel free. Everyone can be free to add commands. I will review the pull requests, of course, before merging them. But if you need something that you think that can be useful, you can do it. There is a link on the homepage of the repository to an article that describes how to add a command. I think that is quite easy, as I said before, because I wanted the learning curve to be smooth. So feel free to contribute or to suggest ideas or issues or whatever.
Okay. I've already submitted an issue, so you're welcome.
Thank you.
Super easy. So that was the first thing. You said there's something else you wanted to say too, or is that it?
No, that's enough.
Okay. All right. Thank the colleagues and encourage the community to use the tool. So that's awesome. So if how can our listeners get a hold of you if they want to ask you other questions or talk to you, or just connect with you online? What's the best way to do that?
I'm on the Discord channel that we all share. You can contact me via GitHub, or you can contact me via LinkedIn, Riccardo Gregori.
All right. And then first, actually, well, before we finally finish here, the Neronette, what does that mean? What's the meaning behind that name?
It means Dark Knight.
Dark Knight.
It's basically the nickname you get stuck with in the high school time.
Okay.
To
All
stay
right.
Dark
with
Knight,
it
that's
forever.
DC universe, though.
Is
isn't
this
it?
Dark Knight like Batman Dark
Batman,
Knight?
that's
Or is
DC. That
this-
doesn't match
Yeah.
with the Avengers.
Or is your just maybe he's really, really heavy into dark theming? I don't know.
Yes, dark. Yes, yeah,
It
dark.
came before the DC Dark Knight.
Yes.
I mean, the movie basically it was quite a few years ago. It
Dark
was my
Knight.
nickname at the moment, and I stuck
It's
with
a
it.
very cool, very cool
Oh, is
name.
this knight with a K? So it's these chivalrous knight in armor knight, or is this dark knight opposite of day knight?
Night.
Opposite
Day
of day.
night. Opposite
all right,
day.
cool.
Yes.
All right, all right.
And it has an underscore before because it was private.
It was private.
Very
All right. See, now this is especially glad why we're talking about this because when I first looked at the XRM Toolbox tools and all your tools are at the top because it's the underscore, I'm like, what's he doing? Is he just putting an underscore in there so he could be first? Like, that's not kind of a jerk move. Okay, but there's a backstory. There's a reason. Okay.
No, that's the reason why.
All right, I give up all frustrations I had. Wondering like, what did they just do that just to try to cheat the system or whatever? So anyway, yes, you've got a legit reason. I bestow upon you the approval of my approval. So yes. well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get hold of our guest. How can our listeners get hold of us?
Yes, Daryl. Well, if you would like to get in touch with us, if you are a lazy developer, Italian or otherwise, and you want to tell us about things that you automate, that would be great. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you just want to shout out for yourself or your colleagues or whatever, you can email us cast@XrmToolbox.com, or you can get us on socials at XrmToolcast. Please do get in touch. And it's really been a real pleasure, Ricardo, having you on the show. And it's been so great to just geek out and talk about CLI and all these different things. And I look forward to hearing about the new tools you're going to be adding into PACX.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Great seeing you. Great meeting you. And have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Ciao.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Darrell, produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@XrmToolbox.com, tweet @XrmToolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.